Kimi K3 costs 3 times less than Fable 5 per token, and it's still beating Fable on coding benchmarks. That gap is verified and it changes the math on basically every agentic workflow you're running right now. Both models dropped recently, and the pricing and capability gap between them is bigger than most people realize. I'm comparing Kimi K3 versus Fable 5 across 5 real tests: latency, multimodal, reasoning, pricing, and context, and every number comes from verified sources with no vendor money involved. Honestly, I went in thinking Fable 5 would just win on raw capability, and that would be that. But the actual results are way more interesting, especially if you're paying output token costs on a high volume workflow. So this comparison is for you if you're choosing between these two models for real work: coding agents, document pipelines, anything where you're burning millions of tokens a month. Because pick wrong and you're either overpaying by 3 times or shipping a model that can't handle video, and that's a concrete fixable mistake. All right, so test 1, real-time response latency. And slow latency isn't just annoying, because if you're running an agentic loop where one model calls another, a 13-second wait before the first token comes back will literally stall your whole pipeline. Every step compounds and you feel it fast when it goes wrong. Okay, so what I found is a split. Kimi K3 via Fireworks hits 165.1 tokens per second on output, which is more than 2.5 times Fable's 63.4. But Fable 5 gets you that first token in 2.66 seconds median, while K3 takes 13.22 seconds. And bear in mind, these are different test setups, so the raw numbers aren't perfectly apples to apples. I was expecting K3 to just win this outright on raw speed, and it does on output throughput. But Fable's 2.66 second first token is genuinely hard to ignore if your user is staring at a blank screen. So I'm calling it a tie. Kimi K3 0, Fable 5 0. 1 tied so far. Now, test 2 multimodal input support. And if you're building anything that processes video, like a review tool, a content pipeline, a meeting summarizer, and your model just flat out can't take video as input, you're stuck. You either duct tape a separate vision step in, or you pick a different model entirely. That's a real workflow cost. What surprised me here is how clean the gap is. Both models handle text and images natively, so that's even. But Kimi K3 processes video frames right through the same multimodal model with no separate encoder, while Fable 5 just doesn't do video at all. And voice input is unverified on both sides, so I'm not scoring that. To be fair, if you're not working with video at all, this advantage is completely irrelevant to you, because Fable 5 handles images and documents really well, and for a lot of use cases, that's all you need. So the gap here is real, but it only matters if video is actually in your workflow. Honestly, I expected both models to be roughly even here, since image support is table stakes now. But native video in K3 is a real differentiator and not just a marketing claim. So Kimi K3 takes this one, putting the score at Kimi K3 1, Fable 5 0, 1 tied. So test 3, reasoning and complex problem solving. And if your model gets a hard coding task wrong or misreads a multi-step instruction, you don't just get a bad answer that looks confident, you ship it, and that's the failure mode that actually costs you time and credibility. I looked at 4 benchmarks here, and the pattern is pretty interesting. K3 leads on coding with 76.1% on terminal bench, 2.1 versus Fable's 58.4%, and 57.3% to 55.2% on Sweet Marathon. But Fable fights back hard on post-train bench at 83.3% to K3's 56.7%, and edges K3 on Browse Comp 2 at 91.1% to 87.1%. So take these with a grain of salt, since they're from vendor-adjacent sources. I was expecting one model to just run away with this category, and instead it came out 2 wins each. K3 for code, Fable for instruction following and browsing. Neither one dominates, so I'm calling it a tie, and the running total is Kimi K3 1, Fable 5 0, 2 tied. All right, test 4, pricing and subscription flexibility. And this one hits different when you're running high volume workflows, because if you're pushing millions of output tokens a month on the wrong model, you could be burning hundreds of extra dollars every single month without even realizing it. And that's money gone before you've shipped anything. Okay, so here's what I found. Kimi K3 is $3 per million input tokens, and Fable 5 is 10, and on output, K3 is $15 per million, while Fable is 50, which is 3 times more expensive on both ends. And Fable's subscription grace period ended, so you're paying per token for everything now, while K3 still has plans starting at $15 a month. Honestly, I knew K3 would be cheaper, but I didn't expect the gap to be this clean across both input and output, because $50 per million output tokens on Fable is just a lot. So Kimi K3 wins pricing, no contest. And that brings the score to Kimi K3 2, Fable 5 0, 2 tied. Now, test 5, context window and long document handling. And when a model silently cuts off your document midway and still gives you an answer you don't always know it happened, you just get a subtly wrong summary of a contract or code base, and you trust it. That's a failure mode. That's really hard to catch. So I looked at the specs, and both models land at 1 million tokens, technically 1,048,576 to K3, and 1 million even for Fable, but that difference isn't meaningful in practice. And what's kind of a nice perk is K3's pricing is flat across the full context window, so there's no hidden surcharge for long prompts. I want to be honest with you guys here. The on-paper numbers are identical, but some users report Fable 5 handles very long documents more reliably in practice. And I don't have a head-to-head test to back that up, so I'm not scoring it. Though it's worth keeping in mind if you're regularly feeding in 500,000 plus token documents. I was expecting one of them to have a real edge here, but nope, it's basically the same number, 1 million tokens each. So I'm calling it even, and that wraps the tests at Kimi K3 2, Fable 5.0, 3 tied across 5 benchmarks. Kimi K3 wins on output speed at 165.1 tokens per second, which is more than 2.5 times Fable's rate. It wins on price with $3 input versus $10 and $15 output versus $50. It's the only one with native video input. And on coding benchmarks, it leads Terminal Bench 2.1 at 76.1% to Fable's 58.4%. Fable 5 wins on time to first token at 2.66 seconds, median versus K3's 13.22 seconds. It dominates post-trade bench at 83.3% versus K3's 56.7%. It edges K3 on BrowseComp 2 at 91.1%. And if you're already deep in Anthropic's tooling, the ecosystem integration is genuinely mature and pretty hard to replicate. Okay, so honestly, I went in thinking Fable 5 would at least split the wins more evenly, and it just didn't. So if you need to save money, process video, or run fast coding agents, pick Kimi K3 because 3 times cheaper is the number that matters. But if you need that instant first token, strong instruction following, or you're already locked into Anthropic's ecosystem, Fable 5 is the right call.